To go, my friend. Owning versus renting, the long-term costs of renting.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, no, tonight I'm really excited about tonight's presentation because it's going to share a lot of information. We've done this many, many times in the past, and the numbers change so much that it really is here to give an illustrational example of how much it actually costs to rent versus how much you could gain from owning.
Yeah, prices have significantly come down, like especially in the last year. And the example that we're going to be sharing in this webinar is just going to be a one-bedroom, just to kind of keep it simple, buying a one-bedroom condo versus renting a one-bedroom condo. But realistically, the numbers have come down across the board for most product categories. There are some products, like, for example, detached homes within the 416 or in the boundaries of Toronto, that really haven't come down a lot in price, but still, just like the rates have come down. So it makes a lot of sense. But anyways, this is just a little bit about us. Carmelo, you are?
Hi, everyone. My name is Carmelo Batista. I'm the mortgage agent. I work for yourmortgageyourway.ca, and you can follow me on Instagram. And most importantly, the best way to, if you want to reach out to me, you can also email me.
Yeah, and I'm Alex Vinieski, realtor with Remax Condos Plus, top 1% GTA condo sales across Treb since 2022. So for 3 years in a row now, agent of Remax Condos Plus. There is a QR code there if anybody wants to scan that and connect with us. I am also going to be sharing some links in the chat. And sorry about the light on my face, but anyways, that's what it is. It's better. Better than darkness at 7 p.m. That's for sure.
So, Alex, let's first talk about some of the benefits for owning a home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So when you make your mortgage payments, a portion of that goes towards the interest of the mortgage, but a portion of that goes towards paying off the principal. I think that's one of the main differences between rent and ownership. Like if you're renting, and let's say you're paying $2,100 a month in rent, like in this example, if you go 10 years into the future, you've basically paid about $250,000 into somebody else's pocket. Whereas when you own, you are putting money into your own pocket every single month by paying down that principal.
Yes. So as you pay down that principal, it becomes equity in your property, right? So over time, when you want to sell it, that money's all coming back to you, right? So owning a home is kind of like a forced savings account. Every time you make a mortgage payment, a portion of that mortgage is going towards principal, which is really it's your money, right? So as you build an equity, what it does is it helps create opportunities for future investments. If you want to buy a bigger home, if you want to own a rental property, right? Having equity and increasing your net worth starts opening a lot of doors.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I like, as much as this one webinar focuses on, owning versus renting, but it's also just, can give somebody an idea that, like, if they have a home and there's significant equity in there and it's just sitting in your home, you're not doing anything with that. Essentially, this equity is just dead money that you're sitting on, where you can leverage that as a down payment for another property. We do have another webinar that we do about purchasing investment properties using money that you already have accumulated. So it's it's a good tool either way. Like you said, it's a forced savings account. There's opportunities. It's a very tangible, in-demand asset. Like it's something that real estate, homes, it's something physical. You can touch it. It's not like, gold or stocks. It's as our population continues to grow, demand is just always going to continue for that. And this is how, especially in the last 20, 30 years, most investors have built generational wealth, and that has been through real estate. So, yeah, this chart that Carmelo has up basically illustrates some of the trends in housing costs. Sorry, Carmelo, I'm having a hard time seeing your presentation.
Okay. So again, this is these are the projected PR admissions and ranges, right?
Oh, so, yeah, exactly. So yeah, so this slide. So as much as people think that there's Canada has put in like an X on immigration, and no new people are coming into Canada, immigration is going to continue. They're still going to continue to let PR, permanent residents, in. They're still going to let people come in with student visas as well. It's not going to be at the crazy, unsustainable numbers that we saw in 2023, 2024. But I mean, as you can see, it's still quite significant. Like in 2025, it's going to be almost 400,000 permanent residents. Again, it's a range. It can be as low as 367. It can be as high as 436. And that number is going to continue. It's basically going to be like in the mid 300s. And permanent residents, a lot of them are coming here. They're already being transferred from, maybe one employer's office to another, or they're coming here and they're finding pretty high-paying jobs. And one of their goals is to get into home ownership as quickly as they can. Like I know even from myself, having worked with tenants to find rentals, a lot of these newcomers are making pretty significant income, and they can pretty quickly afford to purchase a home, especially with the lowered requirements for the down payment.
Yes. And the one thing, Alex, I don't know if you know this stat, but I got this stat from one of the mortgage insurers.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to people migrating to Canada, 80% of them come to Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
So that, let's look at the 2025, let's call it 400,000. 80% of that is about 320,000. And out of that 80% that come to Ontario, 80% of that come to the Golden Horseshoe.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that's over like 600 and that's it's like 64%. Let's just call it 270,000 people just coming to the Golden Horseshoe in 2025. And I like how these are projected numbers, but how they're slowly bringing it down to manageable levels. Right. We're still not building homes fast enough. Even with this immigration, it's still significantly higher than historic norms.
For sure. And all these, we do see a lot of headlines now about, added inventory on the market, inventory at record numbers, all of this stuff. I mean, you have to really kind of like read into what these articles, what the stats are and what they are actually referring to. The things that we see that there's record numbers of in the market are essentially new, recently built small condos that are like 400 square feet without parking, a lot of them in the downtown core. A lot of them are very investor focused, so they're not necessarily something that somebody can grow into. They're essentially made for renting out to a university student or to a professional that's working in the core. So the demand is still quite strong outside of that one product category.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of leads to the TREB data.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if you could talk about this a little more, Alex.
Yeah. So it just shows, average MLS average sold prices. And you can see that, like several times historically, first of all, since 1994, it's been steady increases across the board. Even now, like you can see that the trend is kind of like, it looks like it's reconciling, going up and down a bit, but we just came off a pretty significant spike in 2022 and 2023. So anytime that there's price action that goes into one direction, there's always going to be a rebound in the other direction. The way that I'm interpreting this data is that the market is very much just like reconciling right now. It's finding kind of not necessarily the bottom of the market, but what is that range? However, again, like it all comes down to supply and demand, and eventually it's going to shift back into a more something more balanced. Because do keep in mind, like the weaker condo market is also keeping some buyers from being able to upsize to a freehold property as well. So it is all kind of related, but this is going to be absorbed. This inventory is not just going to remain forever or just vanish. Like there's going to be changes. I know already that the federal government has had communications about potentially allowing foreign buyers back into the market for certain property types, as long as they commit to rent those properties out for at least 25 years. So there are steps that are being taken to balance this out.
Now, another thing this chart shows, Alex, when I look at this, is the time horizon and what happens to prices in real estate over a long period of time. Is like in 1994, let's just call it, the average property was 200,000. And then we go to the present day, and it's just, we know it's over $1 million. It's well over that $1 million mark. So it's gone up over 500%. And I did some numbers, like that's the kind of like the equivalent of, I think like 10% compounding annually. Right. So on average, again, there'll be dips. There'll be dips in 2008 when the financial crisis.
A dip right now.
We've had many dips before.
Yeah, there's a dip now.
Yeah, there's a dip now, and I kind of like look at what's happened in the last 2-3 years. in comparison to kind of like the recent spike in the 2016 before they started introducing new mortgage rules and the stress test. So when the stress test came out, like real estate dropped really quickly. But after a year or 2 years of going sideways, it started going back up. And it looks very similar to what's happened now. Like we had something 3 years ago, 2022, we had a spike, interest rates went up, significant drop. And now we've been going sideways for over a year now. So if history, let's say history always going to repeat itself, but if we look at the long-term trend, anyone who's ever bought at the top, 10 years later is looking out and prices were always significantly higher.
Exactly. So, you know, real estate should always be, something long-term, minimum 5 years, minimum of 5-year purchase. Anybody who's looking to buy with the goals of, like, I don't know, buying pre-construction, not even closing on it, just assigning it. That's how people got themselves into, the situations that we see, on the news and on social media now, right? So it's like slow and steady. It's not as exciting as buying Bitcoin or Ripple or whatever, but it's just like a slow, steady growth. It's very much a buy and hold strategy. But yeah, like just to reiterate Carmelo's point, it's like along this chart, there was always people that bought at what to them at that time seemed like the top of the market. We know right now is not the top of the market of the last 5 years. But nevertheless, even if somebody did buy at the top, 5-10 years later, that looks like a pretty sweet deal. So
yes, that's what's always happened, right? So it's kind of like a look at some numbers, and this is kind of like a real example of what, and this is an example of what you could get for a 1-bedroom, Alex, right? You could, 1 bedroom around in Toronto, give or take, is around 450.
Yeah, so this unit is in Etobicoke. We use some real examples here. So we adjusted some numbers between a purchase and, what a similar unit's renting out for in the exact same building, same floor plan, same everything. So we found this 1-bedroom near 427 in Dundas. There's been several units in this building that sold in the 440 to 450 range, 1-bedroom with parking, with a locker, and a similar unit's currently being rented out on MLS for 2,100. So that's what we used here.
Yeah, so if somebody's looking at today, if you're currently want to rent in this building, you're currently paying $2,100 per month. Or if you were to own it, you could buy this property with as little as 5% down payment.
Yeah, which is $22,000.
$22,500.
Yep.
Now, again, when you buy the property with 5% down payment, you're going to need CMHC mortgage insurance. But again, with the new rules, now you can buy a property with a 30-year amortization to give you the lowest payment.
Yeah.
And the payment would only pretty much comes out to the equivalent of what your rent is. It's $2,103.
Yep.
Right. The difference is when you own, there's going to be additional expenses. There's going to be property taxes. There's going to be maintenance fees in the condo. Right. So your total payment overall for the month is $2,675.
Yeah. Don't forget to add insurance, but I guess you would pay that in any scenario, whether you're renting or owning. But
yeah, exactly. We leave that out because when they're renting or owning, you need insurance, right? So, but ironically, at the same time, we mentioned earlier, like when you make a mortgage payment, a portion that's going towards principal, it's a forced savings account.
Yeah.
So, for on your very first payment, $652 is going towards principal.
Yep. Versus renting, where the whole $2,100 is going towards probably the principal of your landlord.
Yeah. Yes. And the cool thing is, every payment afterwards, Alex, more money goes towards principal.
Yeah.
So your payment stays the same, but every payment afterwards, because your balance you owe a little bit less, more money goes towards principal.
Yeah. So as we move forward in this little scenario, we'll go forward 1 year. So this building was built before 2018. So there is rent control in place, meaning that your landlord can only increase your rent 2.5%. So we'll go forward 1 year. Basically, you've lived there for a year. Your landlord increased your rent by $52.50. So your new rent is now $21.52. And what's going on the ownership side, Carmelo, after just 1 year?
Yeah. So again, knowing historically, look at that chart over, it was what, 30 plus years, prices were on average going up 10%. We're being very conservative and let's say 4%, right? And I'm using Alex for this illustrational purposes, this example tonight, 4%, the same 18,000 every year. So that means on year 2, year 3, on a percentage basis, it's getting smaller. Like you can't get more conservative than that.
Mhm.
So after the first year, the value of your condo would go up to roughly 468,000, which is very realistic. But
Mhm.
you've paid down that mortgage by just under $8,000.
Mhm.
And after 1 year, your mortgage balance has come down, and by about 8,000, and the amount of equity you have in the property, and equity is just the value of your property
Mhm.
subtracting the balance on the mortgage that you have left. You have 30,000 equity. You have part of your net worth. You're worth 30,000 more.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is just, after 1 year. Let's
Yeah.
go forward 2 years. So after 2 years, now your landlord has to sell their condo. So they're basically telling you, go find a new rental property. And we're quite conservative with the numbers. Now, we basically said that when you're like 2 years from now, if you're going to be looking to rent that same unit, it's going to be about $150 more a month, which is, I think it's not unreasonable, especially if you look at what happened to rent prices during COVID. Now they have come down significantly after COVID,
Yeah.
but we're still above pre-COVID numbers. So let's say the new rent is about $2,250.
Yeah, and again, even Alex, before COVID, like rent always slowly increased over time. So this example is still along the same lines,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what happens after year two? Again, the value of the property is going up by the same 18,000. We're not doing 4% of 468,000.
Mm-hmm.
But after 2 years, you've paid over $16,000 in principal on this mortgage.
Yep.
And the equity you built in the property because the value's gone up. Now you have $56,800 in equity.
Yep. Yep.
Right.
So you just continue to build equity.
Yeah, technically in 2 years, you put 22,500 down, you've doubled your money.
Mm-hmm.
Your worth, your savings, you doubled your money. You got over 100% return in 2 years.
Yep. Yep. Now let's go forward to 5 years.
Yeah, let's fast forward to 5 years.
Okay. So again, sorry, Getty, we're gonna get to your question at the end. So after 5 years, you have to find another rental because your landlord is selling again. Again, we're using that same kind of, pretty conservative rent increase. So now that same rental in 2030 is going to be $2,500 a month. So like, just to put into perspective, over these 5 years, you've paid $134,000 in rent. Yeah,
that's a lot of money going to a landlord, and your net worth is the same. Now, when you own, is it conservative to say 5 years from now the value of your home could be $540,000? It's, again, I don't think we're going too aggressive with.
We're not going crazy here.
Yeah. And again, this is where, again, if it's 540 higher, lower, it doesn't change the fact you still pay down $43,000 in your mortgage balance.
Yeah, and you have $137,000 in equity.
Yeah, when you make a payment, money is a forced savings account. Your net worth is increasing.
Yeah,
and after 5 years, now you have equity of 100 and let's just round it to 138,000, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like after 5 years, now your life changes because if you sold this property, you want to, you're advancing your career, there's a new partner in your life, and you need to level up and buy a bigger place. You have significant amount of money to put a large down payment on another property.
Yeah. Or take the equity, use that as a down payment, and keep this as an investment. The example, like the doors open. All of a sudden, doors open with what you could do. 100%. How do you calculate equity? Can we just go over that? Because Getty had that question in the chat.
So, how to calculate equity is you take the value of the property. So
market value.
Year 5, market value, 540,000. You subtract your mortgage balance at that time would be 402,000 equals the equity you have in the property.
Getty, you can give us a thumbs up in the chat if that makes sense. We'll just move on, but if you want us to go over it again, we're happy to go over it again.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to be sharing that again over on the next slide. Like when you own a home, it's a forced savings account, right? Mm-hmm. You're buying a property for 450,000 now. That's going to be worth 540,000. Mm-hmm. After 5 years, you've paid down 43,000 in the mortgage, right? So your balance in the mortgage after 5 years is 402. Mm-hmm. So equity again is the value, 540,000. Subtract 402,300. That's how you calculate the equity in the value of your home. $137,698.
Yes.
Now, for the illustration purposes, Alex, again, And when I did the calculations, I used the mortgage interest rate of 3.94%, and I amortized this over 30 years.
Mhm.
You know, when you buy a home with less than 5% down payment, you know, you do have to pay CMHC fees, and that gets added to your mortgage balance at the beginning. It's not like you pay out of pocket when you buy the property. It gets added to your mortgage. It's built into your payment, right? So even after, you know, you have to pay the fees, you still got 137,000 in equity.
Yeah. And the fee is only applicable if you're getting a CMHC insured mortgage, so you're putting less than 20% down.
Yeah, and again, you take a 25-year amortization, or you put 10% down payment versus 5% down payment, the fees go down. You know, the amount of CMHC fees, right? So this example, we're doing it based on the absolute minimum down payment required and giving you the absolute lowest payment with a 30-year amortization,
Mhm.
right? So, you know, the numbers speak for itself. Looking at that bottom slide, after 5 years, Alex, you're paying 134,000 to your landlord,
Mhm.
or you could have 138,000 in net worth and value, where you could do things with your life. You have
Yep.
options. So
Yep.
that's the biggest takeaway.
For sure. So I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to open this up to some questions. Now, I did share